looking at YouTube and it's like nothing there. Let me know in the comments if you can see a picture, please, because I am getting nothing. And that is concerning. But anyway, we'll get on with it. Hopefully you guys can see it. Let's get into the detail. We'll first of all check off these latest obs, see what's going here on the coast. And then we'll get into what the models are looking at in terms of the next 24 hours and thereafter. Rightio. So current observations for the Sydney area, we can see just general nice falls overnight, sort of that mid-ray range of what the models were expecting. They sort of did say up to sort of 20-30 mils, and we had like about mids. And so at this stage, not bad, decent rainfall, but nothing too exciting. You can see some winds got a bit gusty, and mostly just earlier this one, not long ago actually, they started so up to that sort of 30-knot range, which is about, again, what we sort of discussed in the live stream last night, would be around that speed about this time. And we did see that, if I recall, the worst or the strongest winds are going to start from around lunchtime or early afternoon. So I'll definitely keep an eye on that. We'll check out what the models have got to say very shortly. Let's go now and check out current temps, by the way, are quite mild for overnight. But again, it's not going to get very warm today at all. So it's going to be quite a cool sort of day. So rug up, expect mid-teens with gusty sort of southwesterly starting to increase. And then pretty tending southerly or southeasterly, depending on exactly whereabouts this system does travel. Checking out the Bureau's recent severe weather warning, it now includes all of the Sydney area and most of the Illawarra area, which is about time, because we just saw last night that it would be definitely impacting everybody in the Sydney. It's mainly winds for anything west of sort of like that line, or about Hornsby, sort of Campbelltown, Homebush. So west of that line is definitely going to be more just winds, and on the coast we've got an upgrade in sort of the warnings this morning, especially. The low still hasn't formed, mind you. They expect it to form sometime this morning. You can see very clearly they're not actually calling it East Coast low at all, because it says in that very first part a coastal low offshore the mid-north coast. So what it is, whether it's going to be Tasman and hybrid, who knows? At this stage, it's just expected to be a coastal low offshore, which normally indicates that it's like a Tasman low. But then it's going to move south along that trough that we've been showing you for days now. And you may be having trouble reading that. Let me just make that a bit bigger. Let's get some of that text up so everybody can see. This is when it does get interesting, obviously, because of the deepening or amplifying low or slash trough, whatever it's going to be, pushing into the highs, creating at either side. Obviously going to create these pretty severe winds. The wind warnings for from the central coast through to us, including obviously the Illawarra, now up to averaging 60 to 70 k's an hour, gusts around 110 k an hour, likely developments Tuesday afternoon, which is what we've sort of been saying. And then locally destructive winds gusts with peaks in excess of 125 k's an hour are possible this afternoon for exposed Sydney Metro and Northern Illawarra coastal between Bondi and Wollongong. Isolated heavy rainfall, which may lead to flash flooding on the coastal fringe north of Mullaradella, so isolated. So again, they're not expecting widespread rainfall, and they're not expecting that rainfall will be the primary focus of this this severe weather event. It's going to be purely the winds, with some 6-hourly totals of 70, 90 mils possible, and isolated totals up to 120 mils. It wouldn't surprise me if that sort of exposed eastern coastline on the northeast of the Hunter, like around that Seal Rocks, Port Stephens area, south of Foster, will definitely get up close to that, as they are going to be closest to the sort of outer band circulation of whatever this is developing. Again, the two key things of that is there's been an upgrade in the wind forecast, which we did mention last night, and that, if you remember, that band of incredibly strong winds laying right across the coastline over us for a period of time is what it was concerning, and we'll obviously see what the outcome of that is. If that happens, that if the models come off, that will be incredibly interesting and quite, it's getting up into the damaging slash destructive phases. The other thing I want to highlight here is this locally destructive wind gust with excess of 125 km an hour. If you do recall, I said, I think it was not yesterday, this evening's live stream, but yesterday morning's live stream, with the possibility of water spouts slash tornadic water spouts impacting the coast, getting close. That is what they mean there. They're talking about potentially a tornadic water spout or some sort of water spout moving ashore in these bands and associated with these bands of outer bands of this system. And we'll definitely try and keep an eye on those for you. Again, they're very meso-scale, local type events, and they're pretty hard to spot in advance. But you need to be aware that that is a risk from this afternoon and through overnight as these bands wrap around and impact the coastline. Interesting times. Going now, we'll have a quick look at the Doppler. So again, that's including the whole of the Sydney metro area, and up into now even the eastern part of the Blue Mountains. So if you're in those areas, please make sure you are prepared, you are ready, you're watching warnings, and you also get the New South Wales SES as your local area, or even the general number in your speed dial in case they are needed. They are on standby as usual, our great friends at the SES, ready to come and assist, and we absolutely value and love them for what they do. So go SES New South Wales. Hope everything's going to be not too hectic for you the next couple of days. All right, so this is actually the Doppler radar. So this is actually the radar of the wind. What the radar, so when it does, it picks up the raindrops and can actually then give us an idea what the wind is. So you can see this stage is some just reasonable gusts, nothing too exciting. At this stage, we can see these bands already starting to form off the coast, and that is what's going to encroach upon us after lunch or from lunch, and it's going to actually enhance these winds that you can see sort of streaming in now. Even just then, I can see there is water spout potential already developing. So if you keep an eye on little areas like this, you can see it on just in the stream, but there's a little like reddy sort of area there. That is potentially a water spout or some sort of vorticity there. So they're the things you got to keep an eye on, or even just a local microburst of sorts or a downburst from these incredibly strong winds that are above the surface and are getting brought down by showers and that sort of stuff. Again, these little dots areas that very, very much need to watch. So yeah, that is evidence that there is a possibility. I mean, look how long that one lasted. That is, you can see each of these frames is 10 minutes. So, it's almost half an hour. That little water spout or whatever it is, incredible. Let's see if I can get you a bit close to that because we should be able to zoom in. There we go, beautiful. So you can see here, definitely a water spout, maybe potentially a tornadic water spout. We'd have to get the 3D radar out and have a look, which we'll do maybe a bit later if we have time. We've got more other sort of pressing needs to look at, but that's definitely something we need to be watching very closely over the next 24 to 36 hours. Again, before this system does sort of take a hike and clear off into the east. Interesting times ahead. What we do, we might actually pop up and have a look then at the Hunter one as well, and get it to see what's going on. So the problem we're going to have is there's quite a break in radar coverage between the Williamstown radar, which covers obviously the Hunter, and then the next one after that is Grafton. So there's just a massive big hole, and it's very difficult to get really any sort of semblance of idea, especially when these winds are sort of surface and the radar beam is going to go right on top of them, especially around the area, basically from Taree right up through to probably about just Kempsey, sort of just south of Coffs Harbour, and then it starts to get picked up by that Grafton radar. You can see here the difference also in radar, the radar images where the Williamstown radar is an older type and the Terry Hills radar is a newer sort of Doppler type, but it still gives us a good idea. Let's have a look at Grafton now and see if we can pick up where this low is and developing, and it looks like Grafton's probably offline for wind finding, I'd say. There's no way it's not working. There we go. So it mustn't have a velocity. There you go, even better. It's pretty what time's that picture? No, that's right now. Oh, there you go. So even it's got to be a Doppler surely. Too late to not enough time to check, but really can't see much there. So definitely well offshore, as the Bureau was saying already. Um, we'll go back to Sydney and we'll zoom out to a wide picture and we'll take, here's the current rain rate. You can see there's showers streaming in from the southeast and sort of easing a little bit in the last couple of hours or so, but then we should get a burst as the system does intensify and start to throw gravity waves towards the coast as it sort of starts to wrap into the major system. We'll just turn the radar stuff off here for a sec and we'll just check out these warning areas. So you can see here basically the yellow is the severe weather warning now, and the grey sort of hatch is the it's the flood watch, and you can see it basically covers covers the whole eastern coast. And again, the flood watch hasn't been updated overnight, so it's still pretty consistent. Although it looks like the Hunter may now have been included overnight, so we'll double check that in the warnings which are coming up now. We'll put that radar layer back on, and we'll go and have a look now. This is the rainfall overnight. Make it a bit bigger for you guys. And you can see again some pretty good falls up near Nelson's Bay, Anna Bay, getting up almost into the 100 mils, which is not unsurprising, but it's on the coast and thankfully not really impacting any of those areas that have been sort of battered by the recent flood in May. You can see some good falls up in the back of the hills behind Gosford there. And again, some good falls up in the back of the Upper Hunter, which is good that the Bureau sort of now included them in the flood advice or flood watch anyway, which is something that we've been sort of puzzled about for a couple of streams. You can see again, no massive falls really south of that sort of area, concentrated area where that is being clipped by the sort of outer bands of the system. Still some good falls, but it's pushed inland quite nicely. So, which is again wasn't expected so early with the model. So again, there's a bit of a divergence already, but some still good falls. All right, checking out the SES, and you can see they've got a watch and act for coastal areas there, and that is because of that severe weather warning and the I guess the time is expected to impact people there. And it's really the winds and some good rain, but it's mainly the winds. And they've just basically got the copy and paste of what the actual warning, current severe weather warning is, but they're focused in this area because that's pretty the most in the firing line in the first period of time as the system develops. But again, most of these ones here are just about advice, the usual sort of flooding areas around Milperra. Again, just putting people on the heads up that there's potential for weather coming. Again, also in that back area, sort of Holsworthy, Hammondville, those areas that we know around Georges River there at the back, and quite sort of boggy and low-lying there, and just to be prepared to see what conditions are. At this stage, there's been no major falls out there, so no worries. And again, at the back here, around the Lawn Doctor's premises, at Camden, the usual sort of low-lying areas around there, Menangle Bridge, obviously, given that the Bureau has put a flood watch out, or a flood advice, sorry, not a flood watch, a flood advice out for those upper areas again. Just obviously Menangle Bridge is one that goes up and down, and that is basically all that is around at this stage, just nothing else, which is good to see. And all right, we'll pop in now to the models and see what is happening there. All right, so this is just a general view of the last 6 hours of the satellite picture and the radar. We're going to drag across to give a bit more context. You can see this thick blanket of cloud associated with that trough and the developing system. And you can see when the light comes on it, just how good the upper divergence is by those lines across the tops of these clouds. You can see here that sort of cottony wool effect. Definitely that's the impact of shear on the upper levels, and it's just dragging the dry air, as you can see by this wispy sort of cirrusy cloud, which is the dry air out of these massive storms and showers that are clustered and clumped around the trough itself, and it's driving it off to the east, which is away from the system, which allows the system to sort of continue on and develop and intensify and amplify, because there's no dry air choking the engine that sort of drives these systems. So definitely showing some very good signs of upper support. And again, we'll see the impact of that upper system, the upper trough coming through later today or tomorrow, just how it does impact whether we see that sort of double low Fujiwara effect or we see one sort of concentrated low or what goes on. It's going to be very interesting times. Alrighty, we'll head over now to the models. Let's have a look and we'll see which of these is updated first, and we'll concentrate on winds at this stage. Justify, because that is the primary focus of this system, as the Bureau has pointed out in their warning this morning. And we'll see where it's going to go. Now, we don't really need to worry about too much south. So we'll actually just drive in a bit and we'll just see. For us, we'll focus on the areas around us and what's going on. So this is EC's take. Now, is this now recent or not? Let's have a look. Update an hour ago. Beautiful. So we are in fresh model territory. So this is the 12Z model run, which is from data from last night, around between 9 and 11 p.m. last night. The model crunched it, spat out this just in time for us this morning. So we show you. So as right now, the current time at 7 o'clock, this is where it expects it to be, and we quite know that's not the case at this stage yet, because the Bureau in their latest warnings have said that they're still waiting for this low to develop offshore. And you can see that it's pretty offshore. That's actually not an east coast low there. That's actually quite well off the coast, and that will be then a Tasman low or low, whatever. Who cares what it's called? But this is EC's take at 7. It hasn't quite developed yet, so it's a bit ahead of time. So we need to remember that, factor that in when we're looking at some of these outputs, that the timing is a bit ahead of time. So we have to take a few hours. If not, you can see these figures under the city or the town names here. They're actually wind speeds as well, so you can keep an eye on just what's forecasting. All right, so let's go and have a look. Again, you can see it slides it down the coast by around that lunchtime, which is what we've been saying, and you can see those winds start to increase dramatically, which is what we flag now. Given that the coastal low hasn't developed offshore yet, which is what the Bureau has been flagging, and we just saw there in the satellite picture, there's no real evidence that it has formed. Still quite a deep trough, looking at the most that sort of mess that was there. We probably need to add a couple of hours to this, but generally the movement is obviously going to be towards the south, like the Bureau has been saying. And then you can see those bands of pretty nasty winds as the system just anchors off the coast offshore and then sends those bands around, wrapping across us. Now, you probably will all note that EC has pretty much downgraded overnight in terms of the winds, which is probably a good thing for people on the coast. Thankfully, we're not getting into those 50s and low 60s that we saw last night. And you can see actually it's weakening that low pretty significantly. In fact, it's gone by Thursday. Where's that little wraparound system we saw? Here comes that bit of a southerly that we saw on Thursday, but again, it's staying well off the coast, maybe clipping the coastal fringe, and that's a pretty significant change in EC's forecast. So really on that, no east coast low at this stage, and doesn't hang around too long before it nicks off into the Tasman. Surprise, surprise. And the best thing is that those winds aren't going to be, this is on this of course, aren't going to be anywhere near as strong as they were forecast, but they're still going to get into, you can see here, it's definitely by tonight, into all of the Sydney is going to be up to 45 knots, which is that, really up to getting close to, is that about 80 something Ks, only 90 Ks an hour. So still in that severe category, but nothing, thankfully, in the sort of damaging category, which I think kicks in about 50 knots, if I remember off the top of my head while I'm trying to think. But still going to be pretty wild and hectic for all of Sydney, basically from this afternoon and through overnight. But the good news is, again, as I said, EC does actually has downgraded pretty much overnight. And thankfully, whilst those winds will hang around a bit tomorrow, they're going to be just in that sort of late 30s, early 40 stages. So nothing we're not unused to with those winter westerlies we get, which are, in those 40s to 50s sometimes. So, but still, there's still that concentrated band along the coast. And that will still definitely bring some pretty nasty weather ashore with those showers, which will drag down winds from upper levels. So if we go, we can't go layers because gusts aren't done above the surface. So we have to just change here. But If I go just above a bit higher, you'll see this is one of the reasons why we're going to get, there's potential for nasty, sort of locally destructive winds, because this is the shear about 600 meters above, the winds at 600 meters above the surface. And you can see like a classic Tasman low, actually, a classic cold core low. The strongest winds are more in the upper sort of as they do are on the surface. And you can see here at about 750 meters, 650 meters, pretty nasty winds. And then those stronger showers will actually drag them down, and that's where those locally destructive winds will come from. You can see here 58 knots for that stuff off the coast of swing. And it's already sort of 40 knots over us. You can see that by how quickly the showers and stuff are racing through already on radar. And if we go through this afternoon, you can see why there's potential for locally destructive winds. Look at that. There's 55 knots, 600 meters above the sea. So you're going to see that low cloud racing past up to 60 knots. So, and if there is some stronger showers that bring that stuff down, then they're going to be pretty savage and gusty. Even in terms of the Western Sydney there, you can see 60 knots, 600 meters above the surface. So, yeah, stronger showers, look out. There is going to be some pretty nasty 60 knots. Wow, that's pretty savage. Again, that's a classic cold core Tasman low signature. You can see here the strongest winds above the surface, and they get dragged down. And thankfully, you can see EC does weaken that reasonably quickly as it wobbles around in response to that approaching up and trough, and then buggers off. So I guess that's some good news at this stage in terms of that for us. Thankfully, that those stronger winds that we expect at the surface aren't going to be as continual and as strong as they are. But again, don't forget, if there's some decent showers around, they will drag those stronger winds down. So locally, especially on those coastal areas where probably most of the showers are going to be impacting, still could be some wild times. All right, let's have a look at GFS now. Again, GFS is this is that most recent data. We can see it's again a bit ahead of time. So the Bureau said that the low hasn't developed yet, whether it's going to be offshore. And so therefore we can sort of maybe add an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 hours, depending on exactly when that does. But the general consensus is going to continue to move south. Now, you know, it may not develop into a low if it just continues to move south the way it is. It's going to get captured very soon by these sort of upper moving systems and then wobble offshore to the Tasman. But GFS is pretty much in terms of EC. Again, it actually has downgraded pretty significantly in terms of those winds. You can see here they barely get up into the purple, which is great news for most of us. Sort of intense periods this afternoon as the low wobbles around. You can see really it's just a Tasman deep coastal trough there. There's no real defined sort of circulation. And again, that sort of burst through Wednesday again as the sort of the southwestern side of the system wraps around with those gravity waves fling off, and then you get that concentrated band of southerlies that we've seen, and then really starts to ease Wednesday night, and Thursday quickly sort of disappears. That really that small surge we've been watching about again, that wraparound sort of trough in the southerly that drags up, but still just staying off the coast, which is what GFS said last night. So again, but don't forget GFS is quite low res, so it's smoothed out a lot of this data. So a lot of those local nuances and the more detailed picture, it's going to miss out on. So, all right, let's see what Icon's got to say for itself. Again, you can see it is well ahead of the game. It actually has the system way down, basically off the very southeastern mid-north coast and sort of eastern Hunter. And we know that's not the case because the Bureau has said in their outlook advice only 50 minutes ago that it was still yet to develop off the mid-north coast. So again, it's way ahead of time. So you could probably minus 4 to 6 hours at least on any of these projections. But you can see here it wobbles back towards the coast, and that's when obviously the winds really intensify as it pushes against the geostrophic flow, which is the normal west to east flow that you get from the high pressure system coming from the west. And those two systems colliding is what's squeezing this wind, and also then the wrapping in of the trough that's wrapping in from basically up in almost in Fiji and Australian Survivor up there. Anyway, Side note, anybody who loves Australian Survivor, did you hear the news that they dropped JLP? Just what a stupid move by Channel 10. Anyway, sidebar there. You can see still some definitely some period of pretty strong winds here in Icon. Again, we get plenty of those purples, which is above 40, getting into those close to that 50 range. But again, not really that consistent, persistent banding of pretty nasty winds that we saw in last night's runs. But still a patch of pretty strong, nasty stuff this afternoon into this evening. And then the system, as it wobbles around, you can see it's quite loose. 989 just off the coast, but then it sort of starts to kick in again. But most of the winds say just off the coast, and then it sort of wobbles around. You get these gravity bands, just clips up, and then away it goes off, really into the Tasman. So again, this pattern of GFS, EC, and Icon are pretty much all agreeing now in the next sort of 24 hours of the system as they get this, whatever it is, moving to the south and retrograding to the west thanks to the approaching upper system again, but they don't really increase the weather too much from it. I mean, there's a brief period there where some gusty winds, as you can see on the coast, but nothing like we saw last night, which is those these sort of tealy colours up into the white colours, which is quite nasty strong winds, like those 50 knots we saw now well offshore, which is great news for everybody. But in saying that, this is still they're all wrong in terms of the timing. So this is where the big asterisk comes, and we start to nowcast, and we have to watch the system ourselves and try and identify these. But yeah, just it's a retrograding Tasman low, and you can see that's definitely a nice low there. Look at that circulation around it. But none of it's impacting the coast, which is if it was an ECL, you'd have that center here over closer to the coast, and you'd have that sort of focused in. But you can see the predominant flow is southwestern and westerlies, and northwesterlies are wrapping into this system. So it's an interesting sort of situation. Even when it comes close to the coast there, you can still see it's still southwesterlies. Really not that onshore flow, which you would get with the an ECL, for example, but you also get the need for those really significant rainfalls or heavy rain. And most of this stuff is basically offshore winds, which will be quite drier. I'm not saying there still won't be a chance of showers, but that's still quite a dry scenario there for me. In terms of, in fact, we looked at the rain and thunder. You can see pretty dry, other than this convergent band down. Of course, we said last night all the time, this area down here in that south, but you can see not much here in terms of rain at all. It's all offshore because of that offshore flow. Know with that as well. In the upper peaks, which does not surprise me, that colder air that approaches from the west. Definitely going to be some snow up there in them there hills, and probably some lower level snow too, because just of the nature of this stuff dragging that cold air down. And when you drag cold air down, you've always got a chance to bring that. And as long as there's moisture, you can definitely bring drag chances for snowfall down to much lower levels. All right, let's go and have a look at what Axis has got to say for itself. And then we'll look at Axis C2 and get a bit of a higher res picture for us. So you can see here, again, Axis is sort of what I think what the Bureau must be running on. You can see here the trough laying down here, and the southern edge of the trough here. So the two disparate types. You can see the trough basically extending way up into there. This is sort of aligns with what the Bureau is saying, which they expect this to develop offshore sometime today. And so that's offshore, and it hasn't developed as of this morning. So Axis is definitely a different picture. You can see here it's definitely still a trough, I suppose. It starts to develop a circulation there as it wobbles back towards the coast. But it's a frontal low. It's definitely not an east coast low in any semblance of the definition that you apply to this. But you can see Axis does actually have there's a lot stronger winds than the other three models. So it's going to be interesting to see who wins this battle royale. And you can see it, and it persists and actually then brings that band of nasty winds ashore. Again, you can see up to those mid 40s, right along most of Sydney actually, into overnight into early Wednesday morning. And that's the case. There would be some pretty damaging, up and almost in the damaging wind phase there. But that's a night of pretty interesting winds. I mean, we're pretty much used to those sort of low 40s anyway when we get those winter westerlies ranging through. So it's not nothing we've not dealt with before. The the complexity comes with these situations is with those when as I was saying before, those heavier strong showers drag these stronger winds down, and you get those locally destructive winds. That's when you get the real issues because they can be sort of out of the blue, and they can be not necessarily those what we call straight line, which is where the winds are just going straight. You can basically see the wind streams. They're just following one line, which is that persistent direction. They can come from all over the place, and it's that change in direction that can cause damage and catch people unawares, and that's what the dangerous part comes from those sort of winds. And they're very hard to forecast unless you're watching the radar like a hawk and seeing where those stronger showers, as evidenced by those sort of dark orange and reds on radar, it gives you an idea where they're going. But again, Axis is definitely stronger in terms of the winds, but pretty much then consistent with what we've seen in EC, GFS, and Icon, which is about rapidly through Wednesday, the winds are retreating offshore, the low retreating off, and then that sort of burst again early Thursday, just off the coast again. I mean, it won't take much. You can see here that little bulge as it comes up here. That could be that Fujiwara effect too from that low. Let's have a look at that. We'll zoom out and have a look. If that's two systems, definitely looks like two systems. So Axis is pretty still the only one that's running with that Fujiwara effect here. You can see that spinning around. That's two little vorticities. That one there, which starts to develop again, does come in. You can see here. So there's the two low situation, spinning around each other, the Fujiwara effect. And I guess that is pretty what actually saves us from this for the pure savagery of this potential system, because they're going to cannibalize each other and sort of drag it around more instead of dalliance in the Tasman Sea. You can see them spinning around each other until they sort of eventually absorb each other and disappear to New Zealand as one massive giant sort of Tasman low. Which is that size of that is, by the way, is not unusual for Tasman lows. We know they can be pretty nasty and pretty strong and cover the Tasman. We've said that many times. It's nothing record. It's nothing unusual in terms of those Tasman low. But this part here is incredibly unusual. This Fujiwara of these two circulations and doing that beautiful little dance around each other. And you can see as that system comes down from the north, and it's looking like out the system offshore from us is like deepening and going to be pretty nasty, which it could be. And then you can see how that one coming down tends to actually take a bit of the infeed and the source of fuel away from the one closer to us, the low closer to us. And you can see the dramatic impact. You can see the focus of the nastier weather's way out here, and you can see this one starts to really unwind quite quickly in response to that, and really they cannibalize each other, and then that one sort of disappears for a while, and then it gets onto the fuel source side. You can see it starts to wind up, and the one on the western side then starts to lose its intensity as the one to the east side so starts to take over again and starts to reform, as you can see here. And then interesting, I just want to think that's what would happen if that secondary low or vorticity didn't actually come in, what this system would actually turn into. But that probably looks like what the Bureau is running with their Axis scenario, looking at that. And probably that's, again, will be worse for us in terms of winds and not so much, I don't think, in rain. But we'll check out the rainfall now. Let's have a look. We'll zoom in and have a look. And don't forget those figures you see there are actually rain fall figures. So let's have a look. We'll go from 9 till 9. Actually, we'll go 9 to 9 because that's what normally get the rainfall outlooks are from. Make sure it's exactly the 24-hour period. No, there's only wants to do 23 hours. So yeah, nothing to write home about there. To be honest, that's mid-20s. Windy, showery rain up to 30s on the coast. Good falls obviously in the southern Illawarra again from that exposed Great Dividing Range as it butts out into to the coast there around that Saddleback and Knights Hill area. They'll do massive out of this, no doubt. They'll probably get 200-300 mils, but up there they're used to that sort of falls. They get quite consistently. If you've ever seen sort of any rainfall figures around this area here, so I'm talking about this area along here, I think their annual average is probably 2.5 meters of rain. So Yeah, as I said, it's nothing that they're not used to up that way. Um, we'll look at 24 hours by each model here. Are these, so you can see, sorry, 12. Yeah, I don't know why I'm doing 24-hour periods, but anyway, we can probably do, let's go and take it back to 12 hours. We'll go to tonight, we're doing 12-hour parts so we can just see if there's any breakup. So basically this morning onwards, forget, windy can be really problematic this morning. Mid 20s, 30s, again, that sort of focus down there. GFS, the first 12 hours today, GFS is definitely loving this area in terms of rainfall, but still nothing that's overly dramatic. 64 mils in 12 hours is some good rain, but it's not overly, going to cause too much problems for us. Again, massive falls down that area as it catches those southeasterlies and squeezes the life out of them. Going now into Icon, again, I did flag Icon will probably be the driest scenario, and it is the driest scenario. You can see the obviously activity rapidly sort of moving away from that exposed area up here between Nelson's Bay and Seal Rocks as the system does start to sort of develop and move south. You can see the wraparounds, southwesties, and then sort of westies will kick in and really drive most of the showers and rain away. Still be quite cloudy and maybe the occasional scuddy shower, gusty shower, but if this is what comes obviously, but nothing as what they've had like this morning or overnight. Again, the focus is down in this area here in that exposed sort of coast area for those areas sort of facing to the south and southeast. Looking at access now, let's have a look. Again, not a lot of rainfall during today. If I remember last night's run, we'll see very soon, but most of it was expecting the strongest part or the heaviest part sort of kick in from this evening and overnight into tomorrow. But then looking at those updated models, we've seen that there's been a pretty significant change and downgrade in all of them. But again, they're still all pretty, 4, 5, 6 hours ahead of schedule. So the timeliness will be interesting, and whether that, if this low is still around when that upper trough does get across here, may there be a different outcome, possibly. I really think that secondary system coming down from the northeast and the Fujiwara effect is going to really rob from Allo, because Allo is, it's just offshore, but it's still close to the coast, whereas that one is really deep in that moist northeasterly feed and in warmer sea surface temperatures as well. So I think it's going to definitely compete for resources with Allo, and it will be the winner, as we saw in those model outputs. All right, let's have a look at, did we see EC? We did, didn't we? Let's have a look at GFS. Again, GFS loving us for this next 12 hours. I think we looked at that, some pretty good falls, and I think, no, just going to look at Access C, the Bureau's higher res. You can see again, and pretty much consistent in all the models, some good sort of coastally falls, and for the Sydney area, some good falls too, extending right into the west, which is good, up into almost an inch for most of the basin, and up to pretty 1.5 inches on the coast, and those concentrated heavier falls to that south area, again, not surprising. All right, let's look into the next period of time. So we'll go from 9 p.m. tonight through to 9 a.m. tomorrow, and this is when last night's runs did expect to be the heavier sort of falls. So we'll see if that's going to be consistent, although we've seen that massive change in the models now, so maybe not. Yeah, and you can see Access C pretty much big downgrade, even though it's like, oh my God, there's an East Coast low. It's actually not East Coast low, and that's a bit misleading. That's just a digital application of the windy applying that. It's not necessarily reality. But not much there at all, actually. Sort of a bit of a rain train there, looking at that sort of thin band around sort of the southeast, or the eastern sort of, southeastern Royal National Park, through the Shire, up through around sort of Hurstville, Cogra, up into that inner west area, and probably up through Hornsby too, looking at that sort of thin sort of line. But again, when you see sort of rain train bands like that, that's generally speaking, that's more like locally sort of moderate to heavy falls, as opposed to sort of scattered or widespread. Going into EC now, again, the period from 9 o'clock tonight through to 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, that focus down there, of course, in that areas. Nothing that's massive there at all. 20 mils in 12 hours. Be nice. It's nice and refreshing. Good to sleep in with it. But again, the key feature is going to be winds in this system, and especially now with that, if that Fujiwara effect's going to happen. GFS, of course, still in love with us and still giving some good rainfall, which is very polite of it. And you can see, of course, this corner here has been consistently in all the models we've seen the hotspot for the activity. But the good news for those mid-north coast people is, not heavy falls at all, and that will be very much welcome for them, and let them continue their recovery from that May event. And let's have a look at Icon, and then we'll check out Access. Icon, you can see again, it was a very dry outlook, as I said to you. No surprise there. And Access drier than Icon, or the same, which is interesting. So that's interesting there. Real drop off in rainfall from tonight, whereas last night, if you recall, it actually had tonight as probably the heaviest. So, the picture is starting to really paint, isn't it? Is that really it's 2v2. It's the EC and GFS in one corner, and it's Icon and Access in one corner, which is an unusual dalliance, those two. But but even now, and even on EC, it's not anywhere near as wet as it was. To be fair, it's significantly downgraded overnight. So again, it looks like the key features is going to be definitely the wind. All right, let's have a look at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'm expecting this is going to be pretty dry actually, through to 9 p.m. And yeah, even on EC, not much at all. So GFS up into sort of mid-teens. It'd be nice that happens. GFS has been very kind. Thank you, GFS. Icon, maybe up to 5 mils for exposed coastal areas. Not much at all. And I'm expecting that Access will probably be very much the same. And that is definitely the effects or impact of that Fujiwara effect and that cannibalization of that stronger low out there dominating that inflow, the northeasterly inflow, and sort of sucking it into itself. You can see here Access is actually drier again than Icon. I think at least Icon had up to 5 mils. Access only has up to 3 mils. And we've seen Access C. We won't be able to see much more of that. All right, we'll check then from 9 p.m. tomorrow night through to Thursday, but it looks like to me that event is pretty much done and dusted by then. Can't get it right, and there we go. Yeah, no falls on Access at all. Basically, very light sort of showers, gusty sort of showers from Wednesday night into Thursday. Not surprising. EC again, a little bit more in because it has that wobble around of that bit of a trough or that southeasterly sort of surge and southerly surge on that wraparound effect with as the lows sort of dalliance and Fujiwara out there in the central Tasman. But again, nothing there at all to worry about. GFS is dry. It's abandoned us. It's finally dropped us. And Icon, I'm assuming, Icon actually is being our friend. So, there's still some falls. It looks like, so 2 out of the 4, say some falls overnight from Wednesday night into Thursday, but nothing significant. And that's, again, that wraparound effect that we saw of that southeasterly, southerly sort of surge on the back end as the last fling of these systems as it then starts to consolidate and bugger off into New Zealand. All right, and then let's have a look at the overall accumulated effects from this morning. So we'll go 7 a.m. and we'll go through to 7 a.m. Friday to make it be consistent. 2 days, 23 hours. Okay, so next 2 days, next 48 hours, Icon 28 mils, 20 mils max for the nearly 30. So say 20 to 30 mils for the whole of the Sydney area, a bit more down that sort of southeastern corner, of course, down in that area in the southern Illawarra and the northern south coast, doing much better. But even the mid-north coast up there, not much at all. So those people will be happy. Let's look at EC now. Massive downgrade from EC. Massive downgrade. You can see the difference already last night now. So again, the focus of this system is going to be winds. Up to 80 mils on the coast, 90 mils in that sort of southeast corner. But better in terms of the west, so up to 40 mils and almost 60 mils in the sort of southwest, 40 mils in the west, 60 mils in that sort of inner west, and 40 to 60 mils up in the northern part. Of course, down here is the place to be. Knackling all that beautiful moist feed. Let's have a look at GFS. I'm experiencing pretty in the west of everybody. Yeah, no surprises there. Great falls for GFS. Did nail that May event, so let's hope it comes off. But when it's the one out of four models, probably think the probability is low. But again, up to 120 mils on the Sydney coast and up to 60 to 70 mils in the west, and then nearly 80 mils in the southwest. So that'd be nice if that does come off. It'll be some good refreshing rain, but it looks less likely than the other ones. To be fair, 25% chance, but obviously that massive. This is the area, obviously that Knights Hill, Saddleback to Jamboree, Fox Ground, and back up to Bowral, Robertson, pretty more Robertson and Bundanon because that's sort of on that exposed escarpment there along the Kangaroo Valley and that sort of stuff. They're going to do well now at 200 mils. That definitely will get the Shoalhaven pumping. That does end up there. We tried Icon, we tried EC. Let's have a look now at Axis, and then we'll look at Axis, see whatever it can give us. Axis is pretty very much downgraded. In fact, really now not much at all. Maybe 50 mils on the coast for us. Again, that focus down here, really not much else anywhere else. So mid-north coast residents breathe a big sigh of relief. And Axis C, we'll have a look what it says. Pretty much mirroring what we've seen so far. Focus there in the sort of northern south coast area, they're going to do quite well. But again, this sort of rain train stream here, so it does have some sort of potential up to 100 mils, almost 120 mils in that sort of southeastern area, so around the Shire, around sort of Port Hacking, out to Watamulla, around that Royal National Park there, and I think that's probably just catching one of those outer bands, in-feeder bands into the system. But otherwise, up to an inch in the west, in the southwest, 1.5 inches, and 2 and a bit inches on the coast. Really pretty disappointing in terms of rainfall, but I'm sure that people out there will be quite happy to breathe a sigh of relief. I expect the Bureau will probably clip their flood watch up just as obviously to have people preparing, but what you've all seen so far on this is that there's probably zero chance of any flooding, even flash flooding at this stage. There was no sort of concentrated heavy falls at any of those periods we just looked at. Just to be occasional heavy falls, looking at those bands wrap around, but this might going to be like an accumulation event, not those sort of hectic sort of ECL type rain bands where you get these concentrated rainfall in one area for over many hours. Didn't see that anywhere on those images we just seen. So very much like a Tasman low that's just retrograded towards the coast, and sort of get those bands wrapping around and whacking us every now and then. You get those beautiful fat towering cumulus, cold towering cumulus, or even cold CVs, cold storms. There was some lightning off the coast earlier, so hopefully that might be a bit of a feature. Might hear a bit of a rumble, but yeah, and guessing if depending that off upper trough and its arrival, there could be possibility for some small hail and some of the bigger storms or showers, especially depending on the upper trough's arrival. Maybe early Wednesday, maybe late tonight, maybe. Just depends because that air is incredibly cold upstairs, and if it does drag down that colder air, then there's definitely a chance. But again, the fact that this is a very maritime event and it's dragging those moist northeasters from down in the sort of southern Coral Sea, the chance for any sort of hail is remote because it's just there's too much latent heat being released from the moisture as it's condensed in those clouds above it and wrapped into this system. So very unlikely. The snow we saw here on the in the western areas is definitely in response to the system sort of wrapping in from the west. And we should actually just check those out and see what they have in terms of snow. You can see here around Oberon again, even some sleet this morning in terms of that. You can see here some heavy bands this morning with this afternoon, even on Axis C, but not lasting very long. You can see, and moving away, definitely some snowfall there right up near almost Mudgee. Would be pretty good. I hope Mr. Wells watching and listening because snow around Mudgee is not that frequent. I would have thought. And there's that sort of rain train I was telling you about again. So that concentrated one burst. I mean, if that does come off this situation here, then definitely there will be some sort of local flash flooding around that Tarrant Point area, which seems to go under when someone takes a leak in it. But that definitely would cause some flash flooding if that does happen in that one little particular rain train there. You see how persistent it is, hangs around for a while. But in saying that, there's really nothing there that's it screams in terms of danger. do like to see this lightning, but unfortunately it's offshore. Let's see if EC is going to any sort of definitely some flakes there as that colder air from down upstairs is dragged down. Some pretty widespread sleet and snow there, in the usual sort of higher places around Mount Trickett and Shooters Hill, no doubt, and Genoa Caves. And then as that sort of more maritime air wraps around and there's drier southwesterlies come through, the moisture does get a bit ripped off. But you can still see there was a bit of a flash of snow, some sleet possible around Oberon into early Thursday morning with some wraparound. That wraparound, we saw that southerly burst. Um, yeah, all in all, uh, interesting times, but not as dramatic or as dangerous or worrying as being made out to be. But still, we will yet see exactly what it does present to ourselves. This is it here. You can see beautifully now the trough, and I can probably just turn the radar off so you can see the trough here. You can see this clump of storms, very strong storm there. You can see that really strong convection just off the coast. That's where we saw that potential water spout, alternative water spout before. That would definitely be evidence now looking at that storm. You can see, again, most of the stuff is off the coast. You can see that wispy high cloud as the dry air, the cirrus being ripped away from the system. The other interesting thing is, if you look at that satellite picture the way it is now, what does that most remind you of in the model images we've just seen? Probably Axis Hay. It's this elongated area here down to the south. Both GFS, EC, and Icon definitely had like a circulation, low level circulation, and that's not on this image at this stage. That's just an artifact of the stitching of the satellite pictures. I think that's Windy's having a bit of trouble there, but you see here it really follows Axis's outlook so far. So Axis leading the pack in so far in this event, really picking it up. Nice work at this stage. We'll see who it comes to par. You can see here the trough. You can see the reason why it's a trough. It gets to here and then goes down sort of in a very much a line. You can see the trough lies just about here, right down off the coast. And then this is obviously where the southern end of it is the strongest. You can see some lightning out here. And that's obviously where the greatest convection, obviously the greatest convergence and stuff is in the system. Not much on the western side, not surprising there. Moisture is quite limited. We put the radar back on, and we just put here, we'll put the predictive radar on, just give us an idea where it thinks it's going to go. It's the only thing here, you got to click into it. You can see that hatching, the hatching is where, this is now the forecast direction of these showers. You can see, it is forecasting some of these heavier stuff to start pushing ashore for us sometime early this morning. And then sort of continue that sort of general sort of southeast, east-southeast pattern, at least, which is what we saw anyway in all the model outputs. But definitely it seems like it's coming ahead more than it was. It's, definitely not that system yet. You can see there's a bit of turning there in that trough there, so that's obviously a place to be. I'll be watching somewhere around here between Coffs Harbour and Kempsey. You can see here weeks of circulation there, the trough most likely, but that's where they'll be watching, so the area of vorticity there. See how that responds, as the winds pick up, as obviously just the sun starts to warm up the inland. Alrighty, let's go to quick comments, Q&A time before we let you all go to work. Good morning, everybody. Bradley, Mr. Callahan, Ash, Bindi Bonky, Mr. Well, good morning. G'day, Sean, Mr. Sharp, the King of Camden, Mr. Dine, good morning out there. Mr. Lovely to see you all. Oh, Dita, good morning. Lovely to see you. Yeah, Mr. Well giving us that direction about the airport, which is good. I think now looking at those winds now, I don't think they'll have any troubles probably getting in and out. I mean, there's not that consistent band of nasty winds that we saw last night. So that is good news, I guess, for Mr. Dine's guests. Survivor, yeah. Wobbling like coming out from the club, yeah. Yeah, Thomas, that's they announced it at the start of the stream. You must have missed it, but yeah, it's updated the severe weather warning before. We'll double check that. Dead calm, yeah. It's sort of here on the coast. It sort of had and bursts, but it's actually breezy here now, but nothing that would be described as anything interesting at this stage. Um, uh, Thank you for Mr. Well running the channel, greatly appreciated. That kayak fisho. Thank you so much. That's very sweet. Thank you. I wish I could actually emoji your comment. I don't know how to even do that, but um, that is really sweet. Thank you, that kayak fisho. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate those kind words. Um, ah, ha, hello, bro. Lovely to see you up there in the old GC. Tim Bailey, Miss Tim Bailey. He called it as he saw it, which is probably the reason why he ended up getting the noose in the end. I think in terms of that, but it's him still around, I believe. I see his name on Facebook every now and then. I think he's still actually doing a bit of weather stuff on the side. I think if I last time I saw him, good old bleached blondie surfy looks. Going to head Cox on Friday, classic. I think actually Cox won't be too bad on Friday actually. For you there, because I think most of the focus will be the south. It'll be sort of gusty, dry southwest to westerly winds. It won't be very pleasant in that respect, but I don't think you'll see much rain. That's stuff. I think that's forecast to sort of clear and be gone by then. But we can actually have a quick look for you. Let's have a look. We'll click on Cox and see what Cox is doing. Yeah, here we go. Friday, not bad. Sunny, light winds, 19 degrees. Bit of clouds Saturday, a bit warmer, 20. So, you'll actually, Coffs will be quite pleasant. Bit of a coastal shower on Saturday. Sunday as it heats up, warms up, sorry, molds up with a bit more of a northerly flow. But Coffs looks pretty flash. The sort of next 24 hours for them, 36 hours, a bit like us. But yeah, no, Coffs, you'll enjoy Coffs. Coffs will be nice. Nice change. The ferry to Savo, yeah, the ferry's going to be pretty lumpy, I'd imagine. Mr. the King of Freshwater. How's that is? Windy out there in Camden Way. Thank you for that, Mr. Sharp. They came something down here. It's not even raining at the moment. I think it's just overcast and sort of you can hear the sort of trees rustling around, a bit like a peeping tom in your sort of window, but not much else. The swell. We can look at the swell for you actually. Let's have a look. Swell. Down here. Wave or swell? I think waves is probably the better view, isn't it? Let's have a look. We'll go through to, what is it? Friday, Saturday. Yeah, it's going to be lumpy. What's that? 2 and 4 meters. I imagine they're going to back off pretty quickly, yeah. As I thought, in a Saturday, starting to drop right back down. No, so if you're there on the weekend, it looks beautiful actually. It's backing right off. And of course, that really depends also on these systems about how long they Fujiwara, what they do in terms of longevity. But yeah, lumpy on Friday, starting off but then dying down. Let's have a look at what's going to be in store for us next few days. Pretty lumpy. 3.4 meters, 3.5 meters. Even in the harbour, 3 meter swell in the harbour. Ouch. Yeah, going to be a fun ferry ride for you, Mr. Accountant, and getting stronger there. Look at that, up to 4 meters. Wow. And then, wow, look at that, dying off. Most of the sort of these lows, when these lows start to Fujiwara around themselves, it really stops the ability for sort of huge swell to generate because of the obviously there's no that straight line winds blowing on the sea surface for a long period of time. And definitely helps in that respect. But the Savo's Ferrari will be pretty epic by looking at that. Yeah, that's 4:30. What is it? 4:30 today. I think did I just show you that, didn't I? But we can look again. That's waves. But we should look at. Is it swell we want or waves? That's waves. I think maybe we'll try swell. Here we go. I mean, although I don't know really the difference between swell and waves. To be honest, I've really never been that much of a coastal person. But 3 meters in the harbour this evening. And look at that. Well, Oh, that's yeah. You can see that Fujiwara effect starting to come in now. It really starts to kick the soil down very easily. But yeah, for the next few days, 3 to 4 meters, definitely. And then easing pretty quickly on Wednesday afternoon, as that Fujiwara starts to kick in and those lows start to sort of wobble around each other, as you can see. I mean, Wednesday afternoon's very trip will probably be a lot less dramatic with only 2.5 meters running into the harbour as opposed to nearly 4 meters on this afternoon. Balmoral, yeah. Alrighty, I need to go and get prepared for work. Have a fantastic day. Thank you again for your company. But again, I think the greatest takeaway, actually, we'll just double check any warnings, see if they've updated what we've been on here. Nothing there from the SCS at this stage. We can get rid of that tab. We don't need that. We'll just double check that, see if it's been updated or not. I don't think it has. It was updated at 5:05. When's the next update? Probably 11, I'd say. Yeah, we'll keep you updated on that one. But yeah, again, for Thomas, you've been to join, maybe missed at the start. The locally destructive winds is definitely those downdrafts, those stronger storms and showers, but also potential for water spouts, alternating water spouts, especially on the coastal areas. We've already seen one, evidence of one already. Let's have a quick look now at Doppler. We'll turn off those warning layers. Let's go into 96 Ks, pull up the velocity and see if we can see anything. Actually, pretty a little bit too close. Let's see. So we go. Definitely some in these. Look at that. That's pretty nasty. That's pretty a supercell actually. Actually, that's that storm that blob of cloud we saw before on the satellite picture when we're looking at windy. That's definitely a supercell pretty out there. That's a nasty, but it's way off the coast. And I'm going to worry anybody out there. And you can see those little squares is where the algorithm for the radar picks up defined cells, and there's definitely some water spout activity through here. You can see here the algorithm of the Met Center's storm tracker picking up that particular storm here. You can see the direction is moving into the southeast. So I expect this to get more kick around more to the east southeast, but yeah, definitely coming this way. You can see that very burst of and don't forget that's way off the coast. So to have that sort of wind returns that far off the coast, that's a pretty significant line. This one here, and I think that's what Windy was sort of forecasting that would impact us in a couple of hours' time. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that for you. Again, there's some gusty winds coming for those on the coast here. You can see right now they're starting to build, and you can see there's a bit of an ease in there, a bit of a lag, and then suddenly they're starting to develop again. So they expect some sort of gustier winds to push in. There's not a lot of rain at this stage. This is the lines out here that we need to watch. These red lines. And again, as I said to you, watch these areas of red in the radar. That's the ones where you got potential for water spouts or tornadic water spouts coming ashore. And then also, there's locally destructive winds as that drags those very strong winds down from upstairs in those stronger showers. But you can see a bit of a gap here. So this is those pulses that I was telling you about before that had the low upper end pulses. You can see first pulse and then second pulse coming, and that'll do that as this system troughs slash lows sort of wobble around. It'll send these waves out, and you've got these sort of bands of showers. Whereas a true ECL, if it would be actually here, and basically this radio would be just full, and it would just be rotating around that. So it's more an accumulation server, and then you get these bands within that accumulation. This banding here just goes to show it's still just a deep coastal trough at this stage, not really organised still. We should see that very soon, I imagine. We could see again that sort of vorticity off up near Coffs Harbour at the surface level. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. In fact, we're probably going to have a quick look at the satellite there, and then I need to get moving. Let's go here. Turn the radar off, so we don't want to see that. Let's go into a zoom situation. And we might try the far New South Wales coast, if you can see it there. In fact, it's pretty better going windy. This is better in terms of being able to zoom in, but windy, it just lags so much on resolutions like this, and we're putting on YouTube, but we'll see here. So this is where I think around here is where this vorticity is. And even with windy Tues, you can't really speed up the way it loops. But if you watch around here, and I don't know if it's just a stitching issue with the satellite image, but you can see there's a bit of a turning going on in here already around that area there, sort of between Coffs Harbour and sort of Kempsey. So imagine that's what they're sort of watching, but it could be again just a stitching of the satellite images as they're sort of patching them together. You can see again every now and then there's a sort of blurriness, and that's obviously the rendering software and just not updating in time as the images are stitched together. But still around this area here, I guess is the key we'll be watching. And some of these bigger sort of masses here too. But you can see it's pretty well off the coast. So at this stage, axis is probably not too far off the mark in terms of where this is going to develop. In the forecast, we can see this ribbing effect here. That's incredible. That's extreme. That's those jet stream winds at the upper levels. You can see it just dragging away that dry air, and this rippling effect is that shear, those winds pushing across the top of those very clouds. That's a beautiful sort of cotton wool type effect. Very indicative of pretty strong convection out there, but well off the coast, displaced from us at this stage. All right, I will say that is it. Thanks so much for your company. It's been great to have you all, and I will catch you on tonight, 6 p.m. for the update. We'll obviously, hopefully, well, no, I shouldn't say hopefully because it gives the impression, but I do like my severe weather, but we'll be pretty in the thick of it by then, so we'll be able to give you some reason. But keep an eye on your notifications, of course. I will update you through the page all day long as much as I can. Otherwise, I'm going to do Sean's favorite part of the day, which is the dulcet tones of Silver in Wind, whatever it's called, in the key of C. Actually, I think it's a key of C, but anyway, have a great day. Be kind to yourself, and we'll be obviously in touch. Ciao.